Hello, and welcome to the latest edition of Inside Pima County with Supervisor Rex Scott. I am Rex Scott, and I'm very pleased to welcome to this edition the outstanding director of our Department of Transportation, Kathryn Skinner.
Hello.
Welcome, Kathryn. Happy to
Hi.
have you with us.
Glad to be here.
All right.
Excited.
Fantastic. So the word is out among department directors that this is the place to be. That's why you're excited.
I'll perpetuate that rumor for sure.
Please,
Yeah.
please, thank you, because we need an ongoing slate of recruits.
Cool. And you know what? This is exciting in a new way to communicate with the public. And I know
Yeah.
for transportation stuff, it's sometimes a little dry. So hopefully this is a good way to talk about something that interests me a lot. Obviously, it's my passion. I'm the director. So excited for this conversation.
So along those lines, since you describe your work as your passion, tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to this lofty position.
Well, I'm a graduate of the University of Arizona. That's what
Right.
brought me to Tucson, which I always say is the best place in Arizona. And I firmly believe that. Right after college, I worked for a consultant. So I designed structures, bridges, retaining walls, culverts, transportation structures,
What was your degree in from the U of A?
civil engineering,
Okay.
specializing in structural engineering. And then after a few years, a lot of my projects were in Phoenix. There was a lot of driving up north,
Mm,
and I was building my life here. I didn't want to spend it on the road. So I started looking at opportunities to do something that gives back more to the community I really love. And there was an opportunity at the county with the Bicycle and Pedestrian Program,
okay.
which huge left turn from designing bridges to looking at bicycle infrastructure and sidewalks. And I taught bike safety classes. And from there, once you're at the county, there's so many opportunities. Department of Transportation is a huge department. So I really done a lot of different things there. I've done a lot of finance related things for our capital program when we were building tons of RTA1 projects. I've managed projects, and then eventually I got into leadership here.
And how long have you been the director?
I've been the director about 3.5 years now,
Okay.
and I've been at the county 19 years.
And so you've worked in a variety of roles, Kathryn, within the transportation department. Give us an overview of the department, how it's structured, how many employees you have, just a broad overview of the transportation department.
Sure, we have 190 positions. Rarely are they all filled. So please, anybody that wants to come to the county, we have opportunities. Usually we're running about 165, 170 employees. And we're divided into 5 main groups
Okay.
that align with the major things that we do for transportation in this region. And I should back up and just say, Pima County transportation, although the county covers all the incorporated areas, for transportation, we're focused on the unincorporated areas. So I often say it's the donut around Tucson. Obviously, you exclude Marana and Sahuarita and Oro Valley, but it's a huge, huge area. So we're taking care of the roads in Ajo, Arizona. We're clearing snow up on Mount Lemmon. We're everywhere.
And a number that I always cite for people in our district is that's right around 2,200 miles of roadway.
That's right. That's right. And the majority of them are paved, but we do have over 200 miles of unpaved roads. So,
Okay.
we've got a whole force that does grading. So back to how are we structured?
Right.
We have a planning and engineering group. Planning and engineering looks at what the name says. Planning, long range. They're also looking at the short range plan. They do a lot of coordination with Pima Association of Governments in terms of funding requests. They put in our grant requests to get funding for projects. Then we have our engineering review that's reviewing both some of the more detailed, intensive development projects as well as our own capital projects. And then that group also is doing the operations, traffic operations. Signals, we have 105 signals, and so that's a really important task to make sure those are up and operational. We have the striping of the roadway, and we have signing. So that's one group. We have our maintenance group, which is pothole filling, grading those dirt roads that we mentioned. It's shouldering the roads. It's a lot of the storm response. So I think that's something so important that, many people might not realize is that when the monsoons hit, we have people on call that get that call from the sheriff's office because a tree has blown into the road, and they get out there and they try to get that tree moved before, morning rush hour. They put up barricades to keep people out of running water. So that's our maintenance group.
But with regard to storm response,
Mhm.
your team knows the roads that historically are going to be hit hard by a monsoon storm, but then you're also trying to have a targeted response based on what you're hearing from the sheriff's department or others.
Correct. And the flood control district will put out
Okay, right.
bulletins. So we kind of have an idea of the part of town that might get
Sure.
hit.
All right.
We track that a lot because depending where you are, we've all lived here a while. Monsoons may be on the west side and not on the east side,
Yeah.
vice versa. So we stage barricades at those washes that we're used to them closing quite often, so it's faster to respond. But yes, then there's, wind damage is a lot of the times when you're going to get those call outs when it's
Okay.
not just the water, it's also the other forces of
And I
nature.
bet a lot of people don't even think about that. We automatically think of the water, but what you're saying is that the wind can be as significant a factor.
It can be huge.
Okay.
If you see in the news the power lines going down,
Mm-hmm.
those roads get closed. Sheriff's department often, will close the road and secure it safely, but we'll come out there and support that with the barricades.
Gotcha.
We've also had instances where those power lines hit our signal poles,
Mm,
hit our infrastructure. It also takes out the power for intersections. And so it's really comprehensive the amount of work we might have to do for a storm. And so we're ready with an entire on-call list that is made up of lots of our shops.
gotcha.
Um
I think you were on the third
I'm
one.
on the third one. So we have a mobility, innovation, and technology. So one thing we've really leaned into these past few years is how do we become more efficient and how do we use technology to get us there?
Right.
We know that, it's hard to hire people and money is a finite resource, time is a finite resource. So how do we best focus all of those resources on getting work done? And so we've stood up an entire group that focuses on that. That includes a lot of our GIS, so our mapping, so that it becomes really easy for us at the desk to do research on the fly. But we also have a lot of programmers that are looking at the data, where our assets are, what is our response time, just a lot of tracking. We've also stood up in that group a drone program. So
Oh, okay.
they are assisting with all kinds of work. They partner with our traffic studies folks they can fly over an intersection and stay there and really see how the vehicles are behaving.
Wow.
They can follow vehicles. We did one on Gates Pass where they followed one of our large vehicles to see how long and large of a vehicle can actually make it through Gates Pass because we know that's a very constrained corridor. And we have the drone just following it the whole way so we can really monitor that. And then they also can just do so much with LiDAR where they can see the topography of a road, know where
What
that
is
drainage.
LiDAR?
I'm not gonna be able to tell you what the L, the I, the D, the A, the R stand for, but essentially it is, using, rays of light and how long it
Oh,
takes to
okay.
bounce
All
back
right.
to get the topography. So you can see what the actual ground level looks like, which is, again, with drainage, as I mentioned, or the slopes at the edge of a road. That's really helpful because you can capture all of that and know where we need to do some repair work, know where we need some additional grading to help drainage. It's a really exciting new tool for us to have.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't that mobility division have a partnership with the University of Arizona to help
Yes.
embellish their work?
Yes, the department at large, but that is our group, one of the primary groups that coordinates. So the Center for Advanced Transportation
Gotcha.
Sciences is the name of it. The city of Tucson, Arizona Department of Transportation, and the county are all partnered with U of A, and they do a lot of academic research for us. So when we want to find out about best practices, we can reach out to them, and with their grad students, they can do a comprehensive research on those topics. They have also done a lot of programming and optimization. So we've partnered with them on a sign detection program, which is take a cell phone or a GoPro, mount it on your car, and as you're driving around, it's seeing all those signs and it's able to detect what kind of sign that is, where is it located, because everything has GPS on it nowadays. And then it can automatically go into our asset management so we can have better track of what's out there. Um, Probably most people don't think about it, but with a roadway network that's been growing for as many decades as ours has, there's signs out there that aren't logged. And with 2,000 miles of roadway, you know, you need to know where those signs are.
Right.
And so that's part of having something that is just doing this in the background is really helpful. So that's one of the exciting projects we've done with
Wonderful.
cats. The fourth group that we have is our construction monitoring group. So they cover a lot of aspects of building a project, whether we're managing it or somebody else. So there's a team that oversees our capital projects, so our big roadway projects. There's a group that is inspecting right of way permits. So, you come in, you want to put a new driveway in. We want to make sure that that is built correctly, or utility companies that need to be patching in our roadway to access their facilities. So we have an inspection team for that. We also have a professional surveyor team so that we can go out and accurately locate things, check legal descriptions. There's a lot with survey that is tied into the roadways. Um, and then one of the most exciting groups, which I'm sure we'll get more into, is our pavement program, is actually in our construction
Right.
monitoring group. So they've been very busy for the past 7 years.
And they would be the ones if that would be working with our partners in the road building industry. Because when you
Mhm.
talk about, and we're going to get more into the road repair and maintenance program as we go through the interview, but when you talk about the extent of that work, there's a lot of contractors that we work with in the road building industry, and it's that division that
Primarily,
primarily.
yes,
Okay.
primarily. And then I'll do our fifth group and then we can move on,
All
probably
right.
get more into that. That's our administrative services and support services group. So um, it houses an entire group that is helping make sure we pay all of our bills, which there are
Hmm.
a lot for a group as big as ours, and putting in our purchase orders and whatnot. We also have a huge community relations section. Uh, we take calls all the time, every day, of course. And then they also monitor See Click Fix, which I know we'll talk about more.
Right.
In terms of just, we rely so heavily with such a big network on the drivers of our roads, the people that live on our local streets, to tell us, hey, there's a pothole here. Hey, did you know this sign is down? And so those are the types of things that our community relations is just talking to and taking those requests and explaining how our different programs work. Um, so that's pretty much it for the department and our leadership team. So I've got 3 deputies that are all excellent and amazing. And the whole team really is, I mean, I couldn't be more proud of. They work so hard. They are true public servants. They are just working tirelessly to really keep the roads in Pima County in as good a shape as we can
And because you were
within
a
our
deputy
constraints.
before you were director, you know how important it is to have a team that you can
Mhm.
depend upon. Uh, Counties are subdivisions of the state, and the transportation department, perhaps more than most of the other departments within the county, gets some of its funding, a substantial portion of its funding, from our state shared revenues. Could you kind of break down for us how the county is funded by both local and state funds?
Sure. That's I not just, we are majority funded through special revenues from the state. So 98% of our department's fund. You might as well consider it all state revenue. It's a combination of HERF, highway user revenue funds, VLT, vehicle license tax. So HERF is actually a combination of VLT. other use fuels, the gas tax, which we
Right.
often talk about. So the gas tax was last raised in Arizona in 1991. It's 18 cents per gallon when gas cost 99 cents a gallon, and it was 18 cents per gallon when it was up to $4.65 a gallon. It's been that 18
And
cents.
it's one of the lowest gas taxes in the country.
It is. It
Mhm.
is. And so it creates a tremendous challenge when you don't have
Mhm.
increasing revenue and you compound that with electric vehicles that use no gas, hybrid vehicles which use less gas, and the fact that just even conventional combustion engines have much better mileage today than they did in 1991. So that's really not growing at a rate that allows us to do all the work we wish we could. And then vehicle license tax, annually as you're renewing your tags and you're getting that. It's those two have slightly different equations for how they're distributed to the counties. Some of the big factors in it are the population, population in unincorporated Pima County. So we fare pretty well by that metric because we have over 300,000 people in our unincorporated area. We would be about the fourth, fifth biggest city in the state if we were a city.
Right.
So that's one of the metrics that also looks at how much gas is actually sold in Pima County. Um, so we are getting about next year's budget. We've got about 60-ish million of the HERF coming to us and about 22, 23 million of the VLT.
And I really want to get into the road repair and maintenance program, but I can't talk about funding without asking you to describe this for us. There's a formula by which counties get her funds, and there's a percentage based on uh, point of sale.
Mhm.
Where the gasoline was purchased, and also unincorporated population. How does that existing formula, which is determined by the state legislature, how does that existing formula affect Pima County?
So we do really well, as I mentioned, on the population basis. Where we suffer is the amount of gas sales. In Pima County, it's usually hovering around 13% of the gas sales in the state happen in Pima County. And it's kind of been falling. So we're down to about 12.6, 12.7%. And so that's a pretty small chunk if you think about it for the size of our network.
Right.
So that factors into the HERF distributions, which is where our HERF is, if you compare us to Maricopa County, which has a fairly similar mileage, they get over twice the HERF that we do. Uh,
And the main reason for that
the
is
gas sales, I would
okay.
say.
All right. And what we would like is if they took into account uh, in that formula unincorporated population more than they do, because most of Maricopa County is incorporated, whereas over a third of the people who live in Pima County live in unincorporated Pima County.
Right. Which is a really interesting thing because,
Hmm.
a lot of times you think of counties as these rural networks of roadway, and we're very much a combination of rural,
Right.
exurban, suburban, and we have some areas that are really just slivered into town. It's not a, downtown area, but it's pretty urbanized.
So one of the stories that I always share with people in the district is that the year before I ran for the board, the county assessed the condition of its road network, and 70% of the roads that we were responsible for were found to be in poor or failed condition.
Hmm.
And the previous board put in place our existing road repair and maintenance program. Could you give us a quick overview of that program and where we are since its inception back in 2019?
Sure. So, yes, the county has tried many
Mm.
attempts at figuring out what's the right combination to get that money in place to start doing road repair. So we flirted with briefly a property tax that was for road tax that was only 1 year and it was distributed among all of the jurisdictions in town. But then PAYGO. Is what started the year before. And we outlined a multi year plan that would get transform the condition of our roads and it's $25 million a year coming from PAYGO, and then the department is spending just as much money every year towards the program, and just milling roads all the time to transform it. Right now, we're at a 77 pavement condition index. That's a 1 to 100 scale. That puts us firmly in very good as our average condition of the network. So that's huge. We are not done because the program as it was originally outlined does not end until fiscal year 30. So, we're in the second half of it. We've made a lot of huge progress, but I know there are still people living on roads and they say, "When is it gonna be my turn?" Well, it will be your turn eventually. We have, stayed strong to the program. So, it's also very objective. We've tried to really make it so it's repeatable, the process of selecting roads where, there can be no accusations of any sort of, cherry picking this or that, or if your squeaky wheel, you'll get it faster. We are trying to stay very focused on the data of the road conditions and maximizing our funding so it can go as far as possible.
And the PAYGO program, in terms of its local funding, is supported by a certain percentage in the decrease in the secondary property tax that funds our long-term debt as more of that debt gets paid off, and a certain percentage in the growth of the local property tax base. And the local property tax base, I think, has grown in 9 of the last 10 years. The previous board, in its last year, also use short-term debt through the purchase of what are known as certificates of participation to infuse some additional money into the road repair portion of the
Mhm.
road repair and maintenance program. We did the same thing. Because of favorable interest rates and the capacity of the road building industry to handle that additional work, we did the same thing in our first 2 years as a board. So how has that affected the program, in terms of both repair and maintenance?
Sure. So that gave us a huge head start. Obviously, it was another 50 million for 3 years in a row, layering on the funding we had. It was also happening during pandemic
Right.
and the volatility of prices that happened, especially towards the middle and end of the pandemic period. So we did get some good years with very favorable pricing up front. And what we did is if we published a list that said we were doing all these roads, even when the prices went up, we found money to do all the roads that we had publicly listed for a certain year. So fiscal year 22 was a rough year because prices went up so
Mhm.
much. Um, but it also meant that about 2 years ago, we needed to look at a way that we were making sure that we don't just mill and pave the roads and then let them deteriorate. Because roads, much like a car and other assets, you've got to take care of them. You can't just buy a car and never change the oil. A roadway, you need to do some preservation treatments. So that means crack filling because you don't want the water to infiltrate. That means doing some sort of seal coat because the pavement itself will dry out, oxidize, and become more brittle. So you do a seal coat and it keeps the life in it. So we added a portion of funding from our program annually that we can go back and maintain these roads, preserve these roads, because it's about a tenth the cost to do the preservation treatment to do the full scale mill and repair. So that's a more cost effective way to use our money and keep this asset life longer.
And it's fair to say that if 70% of our roads were in poor or failed condition back in 2019, um, not enough resources were being devoted to maintenance
Mhm.
at that time. And that is a lesson learned for both your department and for the Board of Supervisors, which is
Mhm.
why we're making maintenance as much of a priority as repair. So there's two types of roadways. There's arterials and collectors.
Mhm.
And then there are what are known as either local or neighborhood roads. And the program addresses both those types of roadway. Can you talk about those two different types and how we determine which roads are being repaired and maintained?
Sure. So a local road or neighborhood road, just like it sounds. These are the
Right.
ones you primarily live on. Houses
Hmm.
are on them. Uh, and then once you leave your neighborhood, you're usually on a collector. So higher volume, sometimes a little bit wider, not always, usually a little higher speed limit. And then you feed into the arterial, which are going to be your fastest
Right.
multi-lane signalized type roads. So our local roads, how we do prioritization and selection, it is based on worst first. So we do this pavement condition index run where a van goes and takes the reading and distresses of every single road. We do it every 3 years or so. And that tells us what the rating of each segment of road is. And so we go to the one that has the lowest number, and then that's the neighborhood we're going to do. So we don't just do that one segment of road, but we're going to pick everything in the platted subdivision that was
Because
constructed.
that lowest rated road is in that neighborhood or subdivision is what's known as the trigger road.
Right,
Okay.
right. So it's triggering us to grab all of that. And what we're trying to do is build packages. One, it's more economic to mobilize a company to go do, the mile of roads in that neighborhood or the 3 miles or whatever the size is. And also it's going to build packages that then those should all be deteriorating at about the same pace, and we'll come back and do the maintenance, the seal coat at the same time. So we keep picking the roads until we run out of budget capacity for that year. Um, and then we do it again the next year. And so that's been really effective in terms of changing the condition of neighborhood roads.
And where are we overall? I mean, you mentioned the very good condition of the overall road network, but with regard to neighborhood roads, how are we doing overall?
I will tell you, I didn't pull that statistic. I only pulled the overall statistic. I mean, visually, if you look at our pavement condition map, which is online for the public to see if they're interested in what their road is rated, um, and you can toggle the streets we've done each year.
Okay.
And it's kind of a fun activity to go from where you see these PCIs where it was red, because that's our very poor failed, 7 years ago. And if you toggle it up to today, we touched the lion's share
Oh,
of the
that's great.
roads. Over 500 miles of local roads have been repaved in this program. So, really huge. And then selection for those arterials and collectors that we group them together as one type of road. And we're looking more at right treatment, right time. So a kind of a return on investment
Gotcha.
criteria for that. So we have a program that is looking at different metrics that have to do with the roadway, the volume of the roadway. So how many cars are using it? What is the actual condition? When is it going to fall off and become a more costly repair? Um, and so that program helps us select the roads for any given year.
So because District 1 is mostly unincorporated, we get a lot of phone calls about roads. And if you look
Mhm.
at the road repair and maintenance list in any given year, a significant number of those roads are in District 1. And one question that we get all the time, Kathryn, and I'm sure your team does as well, is, well, can you tell me which year?
Mhm.
My neighborhood is going to be addressed, and we're not really able to answer that question. Explain why.
So one, we do build it annually. So
Right.
we literally don't have a look ahead, and we're redoing the PCIs every 3 years. And we're learning a lot by that additional data. This is a huge region. Not every road degrades at the same pace. And so we're mindful of that as we're selecting it because, one road just might have fallen off the radar, right? And for whatever the circumstance is, it degraded faster. And
Mm.
so every time the ratings come in, there's a possibility it's going to change the order. The cost to construct changes, I mentioned that already. I mean, we had huge 50% cost escalation
Coming out of the pandemic.
coming out of the
Right.
pandemic. So if that means our money can't go as far. That means if we had listed what we're going to do every year for 10 years, that would have changed on
And that was
in the
for
moment.
both labor as well as material and supplies,
Correct.
right? Okay.
Correct. They've stabilized, they've come down somewhat. Asphalt is, an oil-based product. So if you watch how much gas costs, there's some correlation between the
Huh.
price of fuel and the price of asphalt.
Interesting.
So those really expensive years, asphalt was very expensive.
And when we determine the road repair and maintenance list each year, there's a citizens group within the transportation department that plays a very pivotal role. Explain how the Transportation Advisory Committee is structured and how they work with your staff on developing that annual list.
Sure. The Transportation Advisory Committee is made up of 2 members from each of the 5 board districts. The supervisors get to select members of the public.
Right.
And then the county administrator's office has 3 seats. So
Right.
in total, 13 people on the committee. Um, they meet every other month. They have a call to the audience time. So they do hear from the public directly. And we have many times, especially in the early days of the program, for input on how it should work. When we first formed the committee, we did outreach. We tried to understand the best way to program the money that was going to work for everyone. So it was a real dialogue with the advisory committee on the early days, and they've continued to embrace the methodology we're using. And so annually we will present to them what we're able to do, what our proposed program is. We reply to any questions they have. We give them updates at every single meeting on the progress, what is happening with the pricing of the roads. And so they're monitoring it closely, and then they communicate with whichever supervisor assigned them to the committee to have conversations on what are the important topics for the public. So they're a nice second set of eyes and ears
And was
for
the
us.
Transportation Advisory Committee formed in conjunction with the road repair and maintenance program, or did it exist before the program?
It existed just prior to it.
Okay.
Really
All
was
right.
formed in the desire to figure out how we're going to tackle these roads
And to have
because
citizen input that's informed
yes,
by staff council.
correct.
Okay. All right. So that's road repair and maintenance. But as you noted earlier in our conversation, there's an extraordinarily novel app that people can download called See Click Fix,
Yes.
and the whole title of that speaks to the importance of our constituents in a road network that has 2,200 miles of roadway communicating with us about what they see
Yes.
in their communities about the need for repairs. So, what's See Click Fix and how does it work?
So SeeClickFix is an app. You can download it on your phone, whatever type of device you have, and it allows you to take a picture of the issue. And when you take that picture, if you're standing right there, it's going to pinpoint it on a map.
Hmm.
So that's a really great communication tool to us on where the issue is. And then we do have some choices in terms of, is it a pothole? Is it a sign? But you can really put in any concern you have. In our staff that I mentioned in community relations will look through and triage it if it's kind of sitting in the other bucket. So, the main things that we hear about are signs down, shoulder conditions, potholes, cracks in the roadway, vegetation issues. Those are some of the big ones. But we also have an entire group that does traffic studies. So
Oh,
we'll hear
okay.
through the app things like they're speeding in my neighborhood, or I can't see to turn out of this driveway. And those are also things that you can enter that information on the app, See Click Fix, and we'll get it to the appropriate staff to to react to that.
So I appreciate you mentioning traffic studies because it makes me think of the issue of safety. And two things I wanted to ask about. First of all, the transportation department meets on a regular basis with the sheriff's department to share data and input from constituents. Would love to for you to talk about that ongoing dialogue with the sheriff's department and how that benefits our constituents, and then also talk about some other things the department is doing to address not just driver safety but pedestrian and bicyclist safety as well.
Sure. So for years and years, we've had a relationship with the sheriff's department. Engineering and enforcement really go together on roadways. We set the speed limits, but sheriff's department enforces those
Yeah.
speed limits. So many of these things. And there's concerns we hear from the public that are not things we can address through an engineering solution, but the other enforcement can help
Right.
with that. And so, you mentioned a lot of them, speeding issues, also snow removal on Mount Lemmon. We'll get the road closed, and then the sheriff will deem when it's safe to reopen that road, and we really work in concert with issues like that. Um, and during storm events as well, really close relationships. Collisions, we get calls, especially, infrastructure's often damaged during crashes. And so there's an ongoing relationship with them and a monthly meeting of our teams. In terms of safety, bigger picture safety.
Right.
Safety knows no boundaries, right? It doesn't care if it's in the city, if it's in the county. There's safety issues everywhere on our roads. And so the county, led a grant application, which we were awarded with the federal government for Safe Streets for All. And this is a partnership that really, because safety does know no boundaries, we have a lot of stakeholders that are not just the engineering side. So we do have, our transportation and public works departments from the city of Tucson and Marana, and the other jurisdictions as part of this. We also have the health department
Mm.
because this is a health concern. People are losing their lives on the roads. We also have law enforcement in that. And so this is an effort to really better understand what is happening on our roadways so we can be more selective and better at figuring out how to drive these numbers down. We want less fatalities on our roads. We want less injuries. We've been building safety projects forever. But is it the best project? This
Mm.
is really trying to get to the bottom of that and institutionalizing it. We don't want it to be a plan that sits on a shelf. To be interactive with a dashboard where we're constantly learning. And when there are funding opportunities, we're picking the right project so that we get the most benefit for the public from a safety perspective.
So the Safe Streets for All endeavor is analytical. It's systemic because it's trying to involve all of the stakeholders in the community, and it really is an evolving
It
plan as
Correct.
conditions change.
Perfect representation.
Okay,
So that major effort with the contract and the grant should be wrapping up this year.
wonderful.
And if we want to talk about other exciting things for this year, because we've got another plan that's coming up
All
that
right.
we're beyond excited about.
Okay.
Um, the county, Pima County Department of Transportation has never had a transportation master plan. And
Ah,
we have just kicked one off.
fantastic.
And it is going to be, you know, it is going to allow us to better articulate the needs of our transportation system. You know, we know a lot about the pavement conditions. We talked a lot about what our plan is for pavement conditions. But what if that could grow to all the things on our network, right? We have bridges that need to be repaired. We have guardrails. We have sidewalks. We have roads that maybe are not big enough for the growth in the area. We have all kinds of transportation needs. And so this transportation master plan is going to capture all of that. And more importantly, there's going to be a huge time for public input. So a survey will be going out later this spring. We'll, of course, coordinate to get it through your mailing list. But we want to hear from everybody in terms of what they need from the transportation system. Um, I always say I'm deep in the weeds. I mean, I started by saying I'm passionate about this. I think about transportation a lot, but it doesn't mean my husband does. And so he's the right person to take a survey like this. I always say give it to the people that don't think about transportation 24
Right.
hours a day because they're still using it every day. We all rely on it to go to the store, to go to work, for exercise if you're a walker or a biker. And so, we want to capture all of these thoughts from all different types of users of our network so it can feed into what our transportation master plan looks like.
And you're undertaking this departmental master plan at the same time that the entire county is engaged in putting together a strategic plan.
Yes.
How are you trying to align your efforts as a department with what the county is doing as an organization?
Well, I think a lot of that goes into getting the input from the public.
Okay.
So we know that our county is large and has a lot of different needs. And there's a lot of, both the way our community is structured, like Catalina is very different than if you live on West Valencia or if you live in Vale or there's so much diversity. So, really getting into those communities to make sure that we're hitting those needs so they're able to have as much quality of life and success in their everyday doings. And then we're also going to focus on some of the hard to reach communities
Oh,
because
good.
this is one
Okay.
of the challenges we often have. When do you schedule that public meeting? At night, it can be hard for some people
Right.
during the day. And so we're really trying to get out there and figure out how to pull in the feedback from maybe the non traditional survey folks. A lot of times we hit the same demographic. We really want to broaden that.
Well, we have covered a lot of ground, but given the work of your department, I'm sure we could talk for at even greater length. But to wrap things up, I just wanted to ask you this question: What is something going on in the department right now, or that the department really focuses on that we haven't talked about?
I think that one thing, and it's not easy to put a point on it, but I often think about how important and impactful transportation is to all of the citizens,
Mm,
but also for how, it sets an example. It's kind of like, do you keep your house clean? These are the roads that really set the stage for how people reflect on the community they live in. And I feel like our staff takes that to heart in such a real way and are such amazing problem solvers because there are any number of interesting things that we come across in any given day. Sinkholes, or, where did this sign come from? Or, you know, an encampment. And all of these things are addressed with care and concern. And sometimes we've never encountered it before. And staff is so willing to just be creative, and they really try to do it in the most respectful way. And that's something I'm so proud of because I think it is important that we're doing what we can to make this place we all live in just as good as it can be.
well, I think for somebody who came up through the ranks of the transportation department and who also now oversees all of those adaptable, professional, and responsive people, that's a terrific way to end. Kathryn Skinner, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time today and all of your dedicated work.
Yep.
All
Have a
right.
great one.
Thank you. You too. Thanks, everybody.